The golden lights of the MGM Grand Hotel lobby glimmered against polished marble floors. Laughter echoed from tourists dragging their suitcases, while camera flashes from fight fans lit up the space. It was Las Vegas and the city of champions, and tonight, one man everyone wanted to see had just walked in, Manny Pacquiao. Dressed simply in a plain white shirt and dark jacket, moved quietly through the lobby. No entourage, no flashy jewelry. Just Manny, the humble champion who carried the pride of a nation. He greeted staff with a warm smile, nodding politely at fans who recognized him. For many, it was surreal to see the 8-division world champion in such an ordinary moment. But then, silence broke. From the corner of the lobby, a man stepped forward. He held a boxing glove in one hand as if seeking an autograph. People smiled, expecting another heartwarming moment between hero and fan. But instead, the man leaned closer and spoke loud enough for the crowd to hear. "You don't even belong here, Manny. You got lucky in boxing. You're too short, too poor, and you can't even speak English right." The words cut through the air like a blade. Gasps spread across the lobby. Several people froze, phones instantly raised to record. The insult wasn't just about Manny's career. It was about his identity, his roots, his very dignity. Pacquiao didn't flinch. His eyes softened, his posture calm, as though he'd heard insults like this before. The crowd watched closely, waiting for him to respond, waiting to see if the great Manny Pacquiao would strike back with anger or simply walk away. The fans smirked, clearly enjoying the attention. "Yeah, look at you. All that money, but still nothing." The lobby grew tense, whispers bouncing from wall to wall. Staff shifted nervously, unsure whether to intervene. Manny stood silently, the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him, and then... But what Pacquiao did next shocked everyone. The man's voice carried through the lobby, sharper and louder than before. He pointed straight at Manny, almost as if he wanted to make a spectacle out of the moment. "Everybody here treats you like a hero," he sneered, pacing in front of Manny. "But you're not. You just throw punches. You're not educated, you're not classy, and you'll never be respected like real champions." Gasps rippled through the crowd again. A group of tourists stopped mid-conversation. A hotel staff member froze behind the front desk, unsure whether to step in. The fan wasn't just insulting Manny. He was humiliating him, dragging his name through the mud in front of strangers. But Manny didn't move. His expression didn't harden, his voice didn't rise. He simply stood there, his hands resting calmly at his side. His eyes remained soft, fixed on the man who tried so hard to provoke him. The contrast was striking. The fan's face grew red with anger, veins bulging in his neck as he shouted. Manny remained still, as steady as a mountain, as calm as flowing water. The more arrogant the fan grew, the more dignified Manny appeared. And that difference? It started to stir the crowd. People whispered to each other. A woman with a phone pressed record zooming in on Manny's face. "Why isn't he saying anything?" she whispered to her friend. Others leaned closer, wanting to capture every second of what was unfolding. The fans' words grew uglier. "You're nothing without boxing. Do you even know how to read? Do you even know how to speak properly? All your money can't hide who you really are." A few in the crowd shook their heads. One man muttered, "That's too much." Another whispered, "Why is he talking to Pacquiao like that? He doesn't deserve this." The insult stung even to those just listening, and yet Manny stood silently, his patience almost unbelievable. To the fans, silence looked like weakness. To the crowd, it began to look like strength. Then Manny's security shifted closer, clearly uncomfortable. One leaned in and said quietly, "Sir, let's just walk away. Don't give him what he wants." But Manny gently lifted his hand, a small gesture, signaling them to stop. He wasn't going to walk away. Not this time. Not here. The lobby was buzzing now. Dozens of eyes locked in. Dozens of phones recording. A champion versus a heckler, and the world was watching. And as the fan took a step closer, raising his voice once more, the atmosphere changed. The tension was no longer just between two people. The entire lobby was caught in it. Every heartbeat, every breath hanging in suspense. Have you ever seen someone treated unfairly in public? How did it make you feel? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now. The insults continued, echoing off the marble walls. The fan grew bolder. The silence around Manny grew heavier. And yet the question on everyone's mind was the same. When will Pacquiao finally respond? The fan's voice grew sharper, each insult more vicious than the last. What began as a sneer had turned into a public performance. "You think people respect you?" he shouted, pointing his finger toward Manny's chest. "They only cheer because you're some underdog story. But deep down, you'll always be that poor kid from the streets. Money doesn't buy class," the words hung in the air like poison. The marble lobby that once echoed with casual chatter now carried only tension. Every ear was tuned in. Every eye was fixed on Pacquiao. Manny still hadn't said a word. His stillness was unsettling, almost saintly. But to the fan, that calmness was gasoline on fire. He leaned closer, practically spitting his words now. "Look at you. You can't even fight anymore. You're washed up, finished. Everyone's just too scared to say it." By now, the crowd was fully invested. Phones were raised high. Tourists had abandoned their suitcases. Even hotel staff, usually trained to stay neutral, were watching anxiously from behind the desk. Some people muttered under their breath, disgusted by the fans' cruelty. "Why is he going this far? This is Manny Pacquiao. Show some respect." But the fan wasn't listening to anyone. He wanted attention, and the more silent Manny remained, the louder he became. "Say something," the heckler barked. "Come on, champ." "Or are you too scared to open your mouth? Afraid everyone will laugh at the way you talk?" At that, a hush fell over the crowd. It wasn't just about boxing anymore. It wasn't about fame. The fan had attacked Manny's dignity, his roots, his identity. Manny's security guards looked restless. One of them whispered again, "Sir, please just walk away. This guy's not worth it." Manny turned slightly, meeting his guard's eyes, and shook his head gently. He wasn't going to walk away. His silence wasn't surrender. It was choice, and the crowd could feel it. The atmosphere had shifted. What began as whispers had grown into an electric tension, as if everyone was waiting for something inevitable. The fan laughed mockingly, mistaking Manny's calm for weakness. He spread his arms wide, shouting loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. "This is your hero? Look at him. He can't even defend himself with words. Just a lucky fighter with nothing left." The arrogance rang out. But now the energy around the heckler began to change. His voice was loud, but the silence of the crowd around him was heavier. People weren't impressed anymore. They weren't laughing. They were waiting. A murmur spread from the back. Someone began clapping softly just once. Another voice called out, "Manny, we love you!" The fan snapped his head around, startled by the interruption. But the murmurs only grew stronger. People were whispering Manny's name now, and the more they whispered, the more flustered the heckler became. Manny remained still. No anger, no words. Just quiet strength. The tension was no longer between two men. It was between arrogance and humility. And the crowd was beginning to choose sides. The heckler shouted again, his voice cracking with desperation. "Don't cheer him. He's nothing. I'm telling you, nothing." But his words were swallowed by the energy building in the lobby. People were restless, like a storm about to break. The escalation had reached its peak. The next move would decide everything, and that's when the crowd made their choice. The lobby buzzed with a tension so thick it felt like the air itself was waiting to burst. The heckler had gone from smug to frantic, shouting insults at the top of his lungs. But for every word he screamed, the crowd's patience thinned. A few people at the back started chanting softly, "Pacquiao, Pacquiao." Their voices were tentative at first, almost uncertain. But then others joined in, their voices layering together until the sound began to swell. The fans spun around, shocked. "What are you all doing? Don't cheer for him. He's nothing without the ring." His words tried to fight against the wave of noise, but the energy had shifted completely. The chant grew louder. "Pacquiao, Pacquiao, Pacquiao." It echoed through the marble lobby, bouncing off the walls like thunder. Tourists who didn't even know what started the commotion joined in, carried by the energy of the crowd. Hotel staff exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to intervene or let the moment play out. The heckler's face twisted with frustration. His arrogance crumbled into desperation. He raised his hands, shouting over the chants, "He's a fraud. You all don't know the real him." But his voice was drowned out. The louder he yelled, the less anyone cared. And in the middle of it all stood Manny Pacquiao, silent, composed, unshaken. He didn't raise his fists. He didn't shout back. He simply stood with a calmness that looked unshakable, his hands folded in front of him, eyes lowered in humility. It was this contrast that broke the crowd wide open. His silence became louder than the heckler's rage. A man near the front of the crowd shouted, "Manny, you're a champion forever." Another called out, "We respect you." Phones stayed high in the air, recording every second. Social media was about to explode with what was unfolding. The heckler tried one last time to assert control. He marched right up, pointing inches from Manny's face. His voice cracked with fury. "Say something, you coward! Say something!" The chant of the crowd surged again, almost protective now. The energy wasn't just admiration, it was defense. The people in that lobby weren't just watching anymore. They were taking Manny's side. The fans' words sputtered out. His arrogance looked pitiful in the face of overwhelming support. He glanced around, realizing he was no longer in control. The performance had flipped on him. He wasn't embarrassing Manny anymore. He was embarrassing himself. And still, Manny stayed silent. His calm was unnerving, almost saint-like. He didn't need to fight with fists or words, not yet. The silence was his weapon, but then, slowly Manny lifted his head. The chants simmered down. One by one, the voices lowered until the entire lobby fell into a hush. Even the heckler froze, his fingers still raised in midair. Everyone leaned forward, waiting. The cameras zoomed in. The air itself felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath, and with a voice so soft yet so steady, Manny finally opened his mouth. Then he finally decided to speak. The hush inside the lobby was absolute. The chants had died down, phones were raised high, and even the heckler, still standing inches from Manny, went silent. Everyone was waiting for the 8-division world champion to finally break his silence. Manny's eyes lifted slowly, and he spoke in a voice that wasn't loud, but carried a weight far greater than volume. "You say I am nothing," he began softly, his Filipino accent clear. Maybe once that was true. The crowd leaned in. Even the heckler froze, his smirk faltering. "I grew up with nothing," Manny continued. "No food, no shoes, no money. I slept on the streets. I fought not for glory, not for fame, but because I wanted my family to eat. That is the truth of who I am." The room was still, the only sound the faint hum of air conditioning. Manny's tone wasn't angry. It wasn't defensive. It was honest, and painfully honest. "When I was young, people laughed at me too. They said I was too small, too poor, too weak. But God gave me a gift, and I used it not for pride, but to lift up those who once thought they had no chance." Some in the crowd shifted uncomfortably, emotions tugging at them. The heckler's finger slowly lowered, his confidence melting away with each word. Manny's voice grew firmer now, though never raised. "You talk about English, about money, about class. These things, they do not make a man. Respect does. Humility does. Character does. If I have money today, it is only because millions of people believed in me when no one else would. I will never forget where I came from." The crowd was hanging on every syllable. A woman near the back wiped her eyes. Someone whispered, "Wow." Manny paused, then looked directly at the heckler. His gaze wasn't harsh, it was compassionate. "You think less of me because of how I speak? Because of where I come from? Then you insult not just me, but every child who dreams, every fighter who struggles, every person who starts with nothing but hope." The heckler's lips trembled. His bravado had collapsed. He looked around, searching for support, but all he saw were eyes filled with admiration. Not for him, but for the man he tried to tear down. And Manny wasn't finished. True champions are not measured by belts or titles or money. They are measured by how they treat others, even those who try to hurt them. He pressed a hand gently to his chest. "That is what I believe. That is what I live for." Silence filled the room again, heavier this time. But it wasn't tension anymore. It was awe. The weight of Manny's words pressed into every heart present. The crowd, unable to hold it in any longer, erupted into applause. Cheers echoed through the lobby. Some shouted his name, others clapped until their hands stung. Strangers embraced as if they had witnessed something far greater than a confrontation. They had witnessed dignity, triumph over arrogance. The heckler, now red-faced and trembling, backed away. He had no words left. No insults could match what Manny had just said. He had come to embarrass a champion, but he had been humbled instead. Not by fists, but by wisdom. Manny bowed his head slightly as though to thank the crowd, and then added one final line. "Respect is greater than riches. Always." The cheers that followed shook the walls of the hotel. It wasn't just applause for a boxer. It was respect for a man. The applause still echoed through the marble lobby, but soon another sound cut through the noise, the firm voice of authority. "Sir, that's enough." said the hotel manager, stepping forward with 2 security officers at his side. His face was stern, his posture commanding. All eyes turned as he approached the heckler, who by now looked like a balloon with all the air let out. The manager gestured toward the fan. "You've caused a disturbance, insulted our guest, and disrespected everyone here. You need to leave now." The heckler's jaw dropped. He looked around desperately, searching for allies in the crowd. But there were none. Dozens of phones were still recording, capturing his humiliation from every angle. The same people who had once watched silently now glared at him with disgust. He stammered, I was just joking. Come on, I didn't mean..." But the security officers stepped closer. Their presence alone erased any thought of resistance. One officer placed a firm hand on the man's shoulder. "Time to go." The heckler tried to protest, but the cheers of the crowd drowned out his weak excuses. The same people who had once been quiet observers now applauded his removal. Some even shouted, "Get him out! Respect Pacquiao." "Bye-bye, tough guy." The man's face burned crimson as he was escorted toward the exit. Every step he took felt like a spotlight of shame. His attempt to embarrass a champion had backfired so spectacularly that the entire lobby had turned against him. And then, as if to seal the moment, the manager turned back to Manny. His tone shifted completely. "From stern authority to genuine respect, Mr. Pacquiao," he said with a slight bow. "On behalf of this hotel, I want to apologize for what just happened. You are always welcome here. You have our deepest respect." The crowd cheered again. Manny, ever humble, simply placed a hand over his heart and bowed his head. No smug smile, no boast, no sign of victory, meant only gratitude. He could have ridiculed the heckler in return. He could have let anger speak for him. But he didn't. And that's why this moment carried so much power. Manny turned back to the people who had rallied behind him. His smile was gentle, almost shy. He shook hands with fans, posed briefly for photos, and even thanked the staff who had been watching nervously moments earlier. His humility only deepened the admiration in the room. As the heckler disappeared through the doors, the atmosphere transformed. What began as a confrontation had become a celebration. Applause and cheers filled the lobby once more, but this time it wasn't noise. It was a chorus of respect. Manny slowly walked toward the elevators, surrounded not by bodyguards but by warmth. People clapped him on the back, whispered blessings, and shouted encouragement. It was as though the entire crowd felt united by what they had just witnessed. And Manny, he remained the same, calm, humble, a true champion, not because of his belts but because of his heart. The cameras caught every second. They captured not just the humiliation of the heckler, but the grace of a man who chose dignity over anger. And as Manny disappeared into the elevator, the crowd erupted one final time. He hadn't thrown a single punch, yet he had won the biggest fight of the night. By the next morning, the hotel lobby incident wasn't just a memory, it was everywhere. Clips from different angles flooded TikTok, Instagram Reels, Facebook, and YouTube. Some videos captured the heckler's loud insults, others focused on Manny's calm silence. But they all ended the same way, with his heartfelt speech about respect and humility. Headlines spread across news outlets and blogs. Pacquiao shuts down heckler without throwing a punch. Manny Pacquiao proves why he's more than just a fighter. Humility defeats arrogance in viral lobby confrontation. On Twitter, now X, hashtags exploded. Respect Pacquiao, true champion and respect over riches. Within hours, millions had seen the clips. Some users wrote long threads praising his dignity. Others shared personal stories of how Manny had inspired them through the years. One viral comment read, "This is why Manny is loved worldwide. He fights with his fists in the ring but with his heart outside of it." Another wrote, "That heckler tried to embarrass him, but Manny turned it into a lesson for us all." Meanwhile, the heckler, whose face was now plastered across every platform, faced brutal backlash. Social media users flooded his accounts with criticism. Memes mocked his arrogance. Some even compared his behavior to a child throwing a tantrum. His attempt at 15 minutes of fame had turned into a lifetime of shame. But Manny, he didn't say another word about the incident. No interviews, no tweets, no grand statements. He let the moment speak for itself. His silence after the speech only amplified the respect he received. People admired not just what he said, but how he carried himself afterward, humble, graceful, unbothered. Sports commentators couldn't stop talking about it. On talk shows, analysts said, Pacquiao reminded the world that true champions don't need to prove themselves with anger. Motivational speakers shared his video as an example of leadership and humility. Even people who weren't boxing fans were touched. Across the Philippines, TV stations replayed the speech again and again. In gyms, schools, and offices, people watched the clip and felt a renewed sense of pride. It wasn't about boxing anymore. It was about dignity, about respect, about standing tall even when others try to drag you down. Days later, the story was still trending. Bloggers called it the speech heard around the world. Millions of comments poured in from every corner of the globe. From New York to Manila, from London to Dubai, people typed the same word in solidarity: respect. And that is the true victory. Not the belts, not the money, not the applause, but the ability of one man to inspire the world by showing that humility is stronger than arrogance. And respect is greater than riches. If you believe respect is greater than riches, type respect in the comments right now. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring real-life stories of champions who prove that character always wins.